Good morning and thank you for coming. My name is James Greer and I'm the past chairman of the National Drug and Alcohol Screening Association and a current member of the board of directors. Today we're here to talk about the unintended consequences of rescheduling marijuana from a Schedule I to a Schedule III drug, without considering the impact that rescheduling will have on public safety, and more specifically, the potential use of marijuana by school bus drivers, airline pilots, truck drivers, air traffic controllers, and other DOT safety-sensitive positions, along with multiple federal government agency employees. Since the early 1990s, the U.S. Department of Transportation and other federal agencies have included marijuana, THC, as one of the drugs tested in pre-employment drug testing, random drug testing, post-accident drug testing, and reasonable suspicion use. Countless lives have potentially been saved when we have identified safety-sensitive positions and people that were positive for THC. In recent years, more and more federal legislation has been proposed to legalize marijuana, and more recently with the President's executive order to reclassify marijuana, the need for Congress to act and pass specific legislation, a safety carve-out, if you will, which would authorize DOT and other federal agencies that follow HHS testing guidelines to continue to test for marijuana. While congressional authorization, testing for marijuana will not be permitted if Congress does not authorize it. We cannot continue to kick the can down the road and not resolve these public safety questions regarding marijuana use. A DOT safety carve-out is imperative and must be done now. Congress must act today before the train leaves the station, a train that may be operated by someone under the influence of marijuana. The President's executive order, and in fact any federal legislation that may legalize marijuana, cannot simply be implemented without consideration and resolution to the public safety question, which is DOT's ability to continue to test for marijuana. The safety carve-out and its recommended specific language has been provided by the National Drug and Alcohol Screening Association to members of Congress, including those here today, and we thank these members of Congress for providing leadership on this important issue. Those of us who travel on planes, parents who have children ride on a school bus, and all of us here today must demand action and clarify regarding this issue. We must have clarity. We cannot accept vague answers or unsupported assurances regarding marijuana testing for safety-sensitive positions in the nation's transportation industry and those responsible for our public safety. We need congressional action today, we need a DOT safety carve-out today, and we need to protect public safety today. It is now my pleasure to introduce Congressman Andy Harris from Maryland's 1st Congressional District. Congressman?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I want to thank NDASA for bringing this issue to the attention of the American people. We understand there are a lot of Americans who feel that it's perfectly all right to have medical marijuana, recreational marijuana, without realizing what the implications of that are. And the implications, especially regarding rescheduling. If the drug is rescheduled, and I call it a drug because that's what it is, then we will have to have some kind of testing guidelines to make certain that those people who function within the economy in safety-related professions, and you've heard about some of them. You're the engineer on a train, you're the pilot on an airplane, you're the driver of a commercial truck. The American public should be certain that that person is not under the influence of marijuana because it slipped through a regulatory crack. And that's in fact what we need to deal with. Congress needs to make certain that if and when marijuana is rescheduled, that we make certain that we can test. And again, this is to provide certainty to the American public that someone who is using marijuana is not operating something that makes the public unsafe. It's just that simple. And I think the American public will agree that that's a clear red line that needs to be drawn. And again, it's my pleasure to help advocate for that effort in Congress. And I just want to close by, again, thanking NDASA for bringing this to the attention of the American people, because it is a critically important issue. And again, I believe when the American public understands it, they will firmly stand with us to say, no, this testing has to occur. Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Mark Magsom. I am the chairman of the National Drug and Alcohol Screening Association. Our association is the largest nonprofit association representing the national drug and alcohol testing industry. With over 3,000 members, including laboratories, medical review officers, substance abuse professionals, treatment facilities, and employers. Our association has been committed to ensuring that public safety is the foundation in the development of public policy as it relates to drug use, including the legalization and or reclassification of marijuana. NDASA, as we are more commonly known, for years has been walking the halls of Congress and bringing attention to the decision makers the consequences of marijuana legalization and or reclassification without consideration for DOT's ability to continue to include THC in its testing panel. Today, NDASA has made a decision to bring this issue to the forefront by launching a public awareness campaign and asking the administration and Congress to put safety first and take steps to ensure that DOT and other federal agencies can continue to be authorized to test for marijuana. It is now my pleasure to bring back to the podium past Chairman James Greer.
Thank you, Chairman. Has Congressman Sessions arrived? Oh, there you are. I'm so sorry. I apologize. I didn't see you. This is a leader in Congress, along with Congressman Harris, on this issue. And I am so pleased to introduce to you now Congressman Sessions. Congressman, thank you for being here today.
Chairman, thank you very much, and good morning. Today is more than just a red alert on behalf of public safety. It is a re-enunciation that marijuana is an addictive, dangerous product that impacts not only children, but anyone who uses it. It is also called THC because that is the chemical that is involved in marijuana. The marijuana issue is not going to go away because safety for children, safety for women, and safety for those who operate in the public transportation area are affected by this. As a result of the addiction, it is not uncommon for many people to run into problems over years, perhaps a small amount that then increases itself. And the public safety effort that is being brought forth today by public people who are professionals who understand how large this addiction is and how many people it impacts is important. Congressman and the Congressman from Andy Harris and I have for many years spoken about not just the psychosis and the dangers to mental health, but we have spoken about the dangers of people who use it in their everyday lives. Today is more than a chance for us to say we need to make sure public safety is okay. We need to make sure that we impact federal law. Too many states have moved forward on this issue and have thousands of people who are residents of their states who use marijuana on a regular basis, who interact with the public, and who do so in a public way of public transportation. School buses, public buses that take place, and also trains and airplanes. So today I join with Andy Harris and this association to say that we will advocate for this because there are too many stories told by too many people, by families who've seen their children not only harmed, but see their children who have harmed other people who advocate for the federal government to take a stronger role. Lastly, I disagree with the reclassification. I think it is, as Elton John said, our fascination in America with marijuana is one of the most disappointing things that he has ever seen America do. This fascination with marijuana, I think, is done to help support drug cartels and people who want to addict this country, not only our children, but the future of this country, that impacts employment, impacts workers, and impacts our ability to think straight. So I'm pleased to be with you today and join in to make sure that the American people understand that Congress must act, must make sure that those people who are involved in public transportation through TSA are included in the testing process. Thank you very much.
Good morning, my name is Jo McGuire. I'm the Executive Director for Endesa. Our primary message that we're bringing to you today is that drugs and safety do not mix. I'm a mother, I'm a grandmother, and every single day when my children put their children on the school bus or buckle them into their car seats to drive down the road or the freeway, I want to know that those children are not at risk from someone operating under the influence of any drug, much less legal marijuana. This is something that we must have protection for. We must continue to keep the safety record as it has been intact for decades. We are going to hear this morning from some folks who are going to give us an historical perspective about the success in drug testing programs in America's transportation program. And one of the things that I want folks to understand is that since we have started the legalization of marijuana in the states, we've seen an increase in post-accident positives for marijuana. We've seen for the first time greater testing for cause and positives for cause than we have pre-employment tests. That's never happened before in transportation testing. These are things that are alarming and concerning, and they show us what the future is about to become. And what we want to say today is let's learn from history. And speaking of history, I'm inviting to the podium someone who's going to share with you what happened prior to the DOT drug testing program's implementation so that we can get a dose of reality and understand what it is we are about to risk here. Heidi, would you please come forward?
Thank you, Jo. Good morning. I'm here today because on January 4th, 1987, I boarded Amtrak's train number 94, the Colonial, at 12:30 in the afternoon at Union Station here in D.C. I was headed back to New York City, where I lived at the time. Our midday train was full with passengers. Parents and their children were traveling home after the holidays. Many were college students who were heading back to school. There were 660 of us on that train. About 1 hour later, as the train was passing through Chase, Maryland, there was a direct head-on fatal collision between our passenger train and a Conrail train on our track. This was the worst train wreck in Amtrak's history. 16 of my fellow travelers died. 170 were injured, and the remaining 474 of us had our lives changed forever. Why? Because the two Conrail engineers who were impaired by the marijuana they were smoking in the train's cabin, and consequently they missed serious warning signals. They missed the signal to slow down from 60 to 30 miles per hour. They missed a stop signal ahead sign, and they missed the stop signal telling them to stop, make a complete halt before entering the main track. So instead, they entered the main track, then stopped on the same track that the Amtrak train was using. They later admitted to using marijuana before and during the operation of the Conrail train and sharing a marijuana joint in the train's cabin. Our Amtrak train came around a blind curve, and we had no chance of avoiding a collision at that point. The Conrail engineers survived the crash. Our Amtrak engineer did not. The Amtrak engineer left behind a wife and 2 young children. The force of the impact derailed and twisted the Amtrak train. 2 cars folded into each other. Other cars serpentined across multiple tracks. Passenger seats were ripped from their bases, luggage became missiles, exits were blocked by luggage, dislodged seats, and human bodies. There was fire by diesel fuel. Rescuers worked all afternoon and into the evening to put out the fires, rescue us, care for the injured, and remove the dead with dignity. I am here today because I survived the worst train crash in the history of Amtrak. I was carrying a large picture back to New York and chose to sit in one of the rear cars when I usually sought out one of the cars in front that was most impacted. Even though I was in the rear car, the impact of the crash was tremendous. I remember thinking I was going to die and that all the law school applications in my backpack would never be sent. After the train stopped, we had to be helped down from the car because it had turned on its side and several of the extra exits were blocked by twisted metal and passengers' belongings. The engineer and car attendant and 14 of my fellow passengers did not survive, and I have thought about them often and their families over the years, particularly because of the cause of the accident. I am here because they cannot be here. The National Transportation Safety Board found the cause of the crash to be the marijuana use of the 2 engineers operating the Conrail train that hit our passenger train. There has not been another major commercial accident since then because the NTSB has found to have been caused our train crash. Marijuana caused our train crash. That is because the U.S. Department of Transportation instituted drug testing for safety-sensitive employees just after that tragedy. This testing provides the detection and deterrence we need to keep us and our communities safe. However, recent efforts to move marijuana to Schedule III at the federal level will remove marijuana from the federal testing panel unless there is a safety carve-out. We must have a safety carve-out that gives the federal government the authority required to test marijuana used by safety-sensitive employees. We do not want a tragedy like what I experienced to happen again. Thank you.
I am Patrice Kelly. Before I retired last year from the U.S. Department of Transportation after 35 years of federal service, I was the longest serving director of the DOT's Office of Drug and Alcohol Policy and Compliance, and I was the lead expert in the United States government on drug and alcohol testing. I'm here to talk to you about something that impacts all of us: the safety of transportation on the land, on the rails, in the seas, and in the skies. In Chase, Maryland in 1987, as you just heard from Heidi Morrison, there was a fatal crash where 2 Conrail engineers were smoking marijuana in the cab when they crashed into an Amtrak passenger train, causing a catastrophic, fatal train wreck. Heidi Morrison explained to you how that was, what that was like that day, and what it meant to her as a survivor, that we not forget and we not let this happen again. There have been no similar incidents or accidents since DOT implemented its drug testing regulations in 1988. Having worked on the DOT's drug testing regulations since their inception, I have been proud of the fact that the National Transportation Safety Board has not attributed as a cause of another commercial accident marijuana since DOT testing. Why? Because drug testing works. When safety-sensitive transportation employees know they're subject to testing, 98% of the people do not use the drugs for which DOT tests. That is deterrence. However, DOT-regulated testing for marijuana is about to end unless there is a safety carve-out through the United States Congress, which would maintain merely the status quo for testing and deterring use of marijuana by airline pilots, truck drivers, school bus drivers, transit operators, locomotive engineers, pipeline operators, mariners, and others. The safety carve-out would also continue marijuana testing and deterrence for federal employees such as air traffic controllers, such as those who carry guns and those who are entrusted with our national secrets through their security clearances. Why is marijuana testing and the associated deterrence about to end? Well, the federal government's authority to test people for drugs was created by an executive order by President Reagan in 1986. That order vests authority in the Department of Health and Human Services to test for Schedule I and Schedule II substances. Marijuana rescheduling is to move it to Schedule III, thereby taking it out of the control of the HHS. So if HHS lacks authority to test for marijuana, they will also lack authority to certify laboratories to test for marijuana. Now let's look at the DOT side of this. In 1991, the United States Congress passed the Omnibus Transportation Employee Testing Act, which required the Department of Transportation, in its existing drug and alcohol program, to use the Department of Health and Human Services, required them to use the Health and Human Services list of laboratories, the science for the testing, the cutoffs, and also importantly, all DOT testing as required by Congress must now go through HHS certified labs for screening and confirmation. President Trump issued an executive order in December of 2025 to reschedule marijuana. He wanted to begin the process, which the acting attorney general moved forward on the 28th of April. On the 28th of April, marijuana was rescheduled for state purposes only to Schedule III. But the acting attorney general issued another order that day asking parties to proceed to a hearing on June 29th regarding rescheduling at the federal level. The intention, as clearly expressed in the executive order, is to move marijuana to Schedule III, thereby moving it outside of HHS's jurisdiction. There is a solution for those of us who recognize what is happening and for those of us who are not yet aware. The solution is an immediate and clear safety carve-out that preserves the status quo by granting HHS authority to continue to test for and certify laboratories to test for marijuana. The safety carve-out also must preserve marijuana testing and thereby deterrence for federal employees, especially air traffic controllers, and all commercial transportation safety-sensitive employees currently under the drug testing regulations of the U.S. DOT and the Coast Guard. Transportation safety is a fundamental right of every person in this nation. Transportation safety impacts our rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Transportation safety is a nonpartisan issue. It is a necessity in urban, suburban, and rural areas. Think of school buses, airline flights, ferry boats, liquid natural gas operators, tractor trailers on the roadway next to your car, next time you drive on the highway. And please remember Chase, Maryland. Please ask your congressional members and U.S. senators to support the safety carve-out now. Thank you. And I'm going to introduce Angela Moore from Synergy, who's speaking on behalf of the American Association of Medical Review Officers. Angela?
Yeah. Welcome. Thank you so much. Workplace safety is achieved through education that drives deterrence, compliance that is derived through testing and measures adherence to the highest standards of drug and alcohol safety. The outcome of a well-designed program is public safety, which is not limited to the federal workplace, but it certainly starts there. The federal program in place today is the procedural gold standard for all U.S. workforce drug and alcohol testing programs. From the MRO perspective, marijuana carries its own set of unique challenges related to workplace safety, which cannot be overlooked. Dr. Todd Simo, chairman of the American Association of Medical Review Officers, recently shared key points of consideration on this topic. Marijuana causes impairment, and that impairment lasts longer than alcohol impairment due to the fact that marijuana remains in the brain and impacts activity at the executive functioning level for up to 24 hours and even up to days after use. Other key impacts include impaired decision-making and planning, reduced coordination, memory and attention deficits, impaired spatial perception, and divided attention deficits. All of these functions are particularly pronounced when operating in safety-sensitive capacity, like driving an 18-wheeler, or driving a bus, or operating a train, or using heavy equipment, or operating in any capacity that requires reacting quickly, taking decisive actions, or moving with agility and spatial awareness to avert an accident. The available technologies that we have today will only detect use, not impairment, which is very different from alcohol. Our federal options for testing include oral fluid, which will detect both chronic and sporadic use less than 24 hours after cessation of use, and in urine, where we can detect users' use for 2 to 3 days or chronic users for 7 to 14 days. Marijuana as a Schedule III therapeutic fails to have any of the safety guardrails that a true prescription has. We have no known usage pattern or method of use, no known dose, and the ability in some states to purchase marijuana for recreational use, or even for individuals to grow marijuana for themselves, renders us unable to differentiate a legitimate source from an illicit source. In summary, marijuana is impairing. Our tools can only detect use, and we cannot surmise what is safe use in a safety-sensitive workplace setting. The MRO community implores that Congress move to enact a federal safety carve-out for marijuana. Our workplace safety and our public safety are at stake, and the time to act is now. Thank you. And now I'd like to welcome Dr. Ben Gerson with MROCC to the podium.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'm here on behalf of Medical Review Officer Certification Council, MROCC, a nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting the professional standards and certification of medical review officers, MROs. MROs play a critical role in workplace drug testing programs. We are physicians who ensure that drug testing is conducted fairly, accurately, and in a way that protects both workplace safety and employee rights. MROs review laboratory results, evaluate medical explanations, ensure that testing procedures are followed, and provide guidance to employers who rely on them to understand complex drug testing issues. Regardless of where marijuana sits on the legal regulatory framework, the effects of THC on the brain do not change. THC can affect the very functions required for work. These are cognitive functions that are critical in safety-sensitive roles across public transportation. Any change that affects THC testing in workplace programs must take workplace and public safety into consideration. Without clear understanding for the need for a safety-sensitive workplace and detailed guidance for MROs, these changes create serious practical concerns for employees, employers, the public, and the industries that rely on them. may unintentionally send the message that cannabis use has no workplace safety implications. The science does not support that. THC affects the cognitive functions that matter most in safety-sensitive work. Removing clear testing pathways without guidance creates confusion for employers, employees, and MROs. We've already heard the history of how we came to be here. I'm not going to repeat that, but as the point being that drug testing, which includes the MRO process, does work. Cannabis use continues to grow. Available products have changed. Potency has increased. Both the illicit market and the state-regulated markets now include a wide range of THC products. And like any substance, as dose increases, the effects can change. Workplace drug testing is not about punishment. It is about prevention, clarity, and safety for both employees and the public. MROCC's position is simple. As laws evolve, safety-sensitive workplace and public safety must remain priority number one. Appropriate safeguards to ensure workplace drug testing standards are essential to protect both safety and fairness. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today, and now it's my pleasure to introduce Nick Niforatos.
My name is Luke Niforatos. I'm the Executive Vice President at SAM, Smart Approaches to Marijuana. I'm here on behalf of our CEO, Dr. Kevin Sabet. I want to thank Endesa and the many leaders that are gathered around me for taking the stand on this important issue. And we join and echo their call that Congress must act now to save today's generation and future generations from the harms of a policy that will have a wide array of unintended consequences. The Attorney General's illegal, hastily written order to reschedule marijuana overnight has opened up a Pandora's box of consequences for the American people. Today, you're hearing about one of those consequences, and it's a big one: the safety of our workforce, the safety of people on the roads. Just last year in Michigan, 2025, a school bus driver tested positive for marijuana and crashed the school bus, leading to amputation of limbs for children. In our neighborhoods across America, this is the threat and the reality we are staring down if Congress does not act now on the safety carve-out legislation. We implore Congress to do that. It's important to understand that with the rescheduling of marijuana comes not only this issue of the safety carve-out, it also comes with a host of consequences for public health and safety, like addiction, like the impairment on the roads, like psychosis and schizophrenia that we are learning more about the links with this drug. There are so many things to think about and to deal with from a policy perspective, and none of them have been dealt with in this illegal order by the Attorney General. By recognizing this industry overnight, the ball has been advanced forward for the marijuana industry, but we, as the American people and our health and safety, have been set back a century in efforts being done by many of the organizations and companies here today and many others throughout the history of this country. A century of work to protect the health of the American people by making sure scientists and doctors decide what a drug scheduling status is, not industry barons peddling the latest addictive product. A century of work. You heard about the accidents and crashes on the road, the crashes of trains. A century of work to build up a drug testing regime in this country from the federal government, to set standards, to test for drugs to make sure people in those positions are not coming up positive so that people don't lose their lives. This is not about creating a new industry. This is not what we have heard from the Attorney General and the President, that this is about increasing research and making sure people can use a low-dose medical marijuana product. This is about a dangerous psychotropic drug that is hurting the American people in a wide variety of ways, and today we're here to talk about the way it impacts our roads and our safety-sensitive professions. We cannot have another driver driving a school bus that comes up positive for marijuana. We cannot put the profits of today's robber barons, the CEOs of the big marijuana companies that are invested in by tobacco, alcohol, and pharma, they're the latest get-rich-quick scheme. We cannot put their profits above our children. Congress, we're calling on you now to enact the safety carve-out legislation. And Endesa, I thank you for leading this important cause.
Thank you, Luke. And thank you to everyone who came out today to support us, to speak from our industries, from our safety industries, from transportation. We are so grateful that you all came. And one thing that I just want to leave you with is this is about public safety. We are here today to talk about our why. This is a school bus driver every day. My granddaughter, who is in kindergarten, you ride the school bus every day?
Yes.
Every single day. And you want to be safe on your school bus?
Yes.
Yep, we want to be safe on the school bus. We want every child on a train, on an airplane, in a bus, in a car with their parents to be safe. So we implore you to get that safety carve-out done, whether it's you, Mr. President, or Congress. That's what we're here for, and thank you all for standing for public safety.
Way to go, everybody.
You know, I almost